Captain Picard. Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
My Readier Room.
Hello, and welcome to the Readier Room, the only and longest-running Star Trek The Next Generation rewatch podcast with behind-the-scenes stories and on-set lore. My name is Mitchell Mells, Chief Consultant of Services at Paramount Studios, and with me is my life partner, Brandon Hobbs, former Head of Resources Management. Brandon, how are we today?
Well, Mitch, today I am feeling particularly readier.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm excited. Got my diet soda with me, my diet Pepsi.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
I heard in just a little health advisory, I heard that diet soda can actually give you cancer.
Yeah, actually, that is true. That is true. That is why I drink it.
Oh, I see. To accelerate the process.
Topical warning today, Mitch, though, because we're going to be discussing the health risks of drugs and stuff like that with this episode.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, ahead of time, because who knows what episode we could be talking about today. We've been going in order, but one of these days we're just going to jump to, season 5.
Yeah, keep it interesting.
Right. Whenever there's a particularly disagreeable episode.
Of course.
But,
just burn it all to the ground, basically.
But not an episode as disagreeable as The Naked Now, I suppose, which is unavoidable.
It's hard to get more disagreeable than that.
I agree. So I can't get more disagreeable than that. I can't get disagreeable at all. So, you want to hear a joke?
Absolutely.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Question
who?
Question of the week.
Oh!
Ah! It's a good joke, if I'm being...
That was good.
Honest.
Yeah.
So this week's question of the week comes from Francois in Brussels, of all places, who asks, tell me a story about Jonathan Frakes. And that is not a question, but I still think it's a good thing to go over. But I do want to take this opportunity to make Francois a bit of an example, to have just a modicum of etiquette when contacting people that you care about and you respect. It's you don't want to bark orders at anybody that's very rude, and
right.
I can't imagine the lack of awareness that goes into doing something like this. But don't be like Francois. Just be a little more polite when addressing people who are taking time from their day to collect your Patreon donations and speak into a microphone for an hour a week.
Right. And we would also appreciate a header, like a captain, comma.
Exactly.
At the end, regards, thank you, best wishes.
Right. Just how would you talk to your boss at work? How would you address Captain Picard? You're not
right, because that is the relationship that we have here, in a sense.
Exactly. So do better, be better, and maybe we'll keep making this show for you.
Thank you, Mitch. I mean, that's always so hard to talk.
Yeah.
It's important. It's important.
Fans need to know their place. We're not your friends. You do not have a friendship with us.
Right.
You can keep your parasocial relationships to yourself, and hopefully at some point in your life find a real connection with somebody that isn't us.
The one caveat to this, however, Mitch, is if those of you in the audience are 17-year-old girls, then I would be more than happy to groom you.
Right.
Of course.
Of course.
Otherwise, let's just keep it,
Right, but we have DMs for that.
Yes, yeah. DMs are open.
Right.
They're what, capital R, capital R?
Yeah, exactly. Just state your ASL in your first DM, and
right.
We'll go from there. So my favorite Jonathan Frakes story. So you know how? Well, of course you know, but you guys at home, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Jonathan Frakes went on after his Trek lifespan to host Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction, which was this kind of anthology show where Frakes would introduce a variety of stories, and the thrust of that show was that you wouldn't know if they were real or fake until Frakes told you. But an anthology story show, that's what everybody does know. What everybody doesn't know is that Frakes was like obsessed with anthologies. Like hosting an anthology was his dream for the bigger part of his acting career. I think it was around season 2 or 3 of Trek TNG when they started airing Tales from the Crypt on HBO. You know, the Crypt Keeper and whatnot.
Right, yeah.
Horror anthology.
How could I forget?
Right. Frakes always insisted on somebody sitting down to watch it with him. He'd be like, "You got to see this. You got to see it." He'd like get several cast members, anybody in production who felt strong-armed by his star power. He was just so in love with it. And like he would do his Crypt Keeper impression around the set. It wasn't very good, but you know, he enjoyed doing it. But when he was doing the Crypt Keeper thing, he would tell stories about the cast and like of our show, and eventually the stories just kind of got a little too personal. Like he'd be divulging things that they told him in confidence, and that became this whole thing. But we convinced him to stop doing it, but the passion never left him for the anthology shows. And once he was asked to host Beyond Belief, well, he was excited beyond belief. Like he was just beside himself.
Yeah, and that was really it for him. He'd really found his calling there, huh?
Yeah. So much so that when they asked him to reprise his role as the Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction host for a NFL Super Bowl spot, he dropped everything in his schedule, flew out to do it, did it for free, and yeah, amazing. I don't know. I never liked Beyond Belief all that much.
Really?
Yeah, I can't watch it without thinking of the Frakes that I know, that we know from
I guess
Trek.
That's true, huh?
Yeah. I mean, if you only know Frakes from one side of the camera, from the audience side, then you can tolerate it pretty well, and perhaps you'd even enjoy it. But on the back side of the camera, it mars the entire thing.
It does lose a little bit of its charm, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know. If I were you guys, I wouldn't deify Frakes like people seem to, and that he seems to encourage you to do.
Right. He does kind of command that aura around himself.
Exactly.
And there's a reason for that.
I really can't stand people who demand that level of respect from really anybody. You earn it.
Right.
And if people aren't going to give it to you, then that's something on your fault. So you can't just ask to be respected. It's insane, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Okay. So, good question, Francois. Work on your manners a little bit, and maybe you can ask us another one sometime. If you at home want to send us a question to ask, you can send it to our Gmail account, which is the readierroom@gmail.com, capital T, capital R, or you can DM us on Twitter. Again, just state your ASL, and our Twitter is the Readier Room. So, looking forward to all our ensigns contacting us with all the most important and amusing questions you can think of. Okay, so this week we have an episode of Star Trek to talk about, and this week we're talking about Star Trek: The Next Generation. So this is episode 21, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, could be episode 16. Who knows? Symbiosis, which is a very literally named episode, given its contents.
Yeah.
Although you would think that it would kind of be more parasitic in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, well, what do you mean? Like in the context of the relationship?
Yeah, so obviously it's the title's talking about these two alien cultures in the show, and Symbiosis, presumably they have a symbiotic relationship where they both benefit one another, but in actuality, as the plot turns happen, it's discovered that it's more of a parasitic relationship.
Right. Well, you see, that's where the twist is.
Right. Oh, so even the title. I guess you don't want the title to betray the twist.
Right.
You could just call it like I don't know, like the drug trade of Brechia, or
Yeah.
2 moons over the galaxy, or something.
Really, just give it 2 moons over the galaxy.
Yeah.
Poetic.
I thought so. I think that's a good name. I should have named more episodes, really.
I do like it when the title tells us exactly what's going to happen. I like knowing these things before going into it.
Oh, just wait until we get to our next episode, Yar Dies.
Right, yeah. Which was the working title for that.
Right. We really pushed for that. But that's a story for next week.
Yeah.
So, this episode's really interesting to me because I think that I hated a very large percentage of it, but I also think it's my favorite episode of this season so far.
That's pretty wild. I enjoyed the concept, I guess. It was something that I think hasn't really been tackled yet in Trek up to this point. A very real world situation, right? Very relatable situation. But for some reason, we had to turn it into a PSA.
Yeah.
Right.
There's one scene in particular.
Right.
And that stuff does stand out as being pretty out of place, I would say. Because that stuff involves like one character who has no other role in the episode at all other than to be an audience stand-in. And it actually involves another character who has no role in the plot at all. Holy shit.
Right.
Oh, God.
Right. It's a complete non sequitur, and they do everything short of looking straight at the camera.
Right, and saying, don't do drugs.
Yeah.
So
that angle was just a little bit much.
It was, but I don't want to say the Prime Directive stuff was good, because once again, there's like this misunderstanding of the Prime Directive.
Yes.
But
in fact, I would say it was horrible.
But putting the usage of the term Prime Directive aside, I did really enjoy the Picard's attitude in approaching that problem.
See, and this is something that I've had a problem with Trek about for as long as I can remember, and that's the fact that it's moral relativism can sometimes just take things a little bit too far. I mean, what they're trying to do is they're trying to lay out the situation that makes the audience subjectively, think there's definitely a right thing to do here, right? And that's take away these drugs.
Right.
And Picard is trying to apply some kind of reason to it in order to not, kind of take a step back, look at it objectively, and not interfere with these two worlds. And I just feel like it's not earned at all. I think there's really no tangible negative to telling an entire world that another world has them by the balls,
Yes. So what I like about it, about specifically this moral relativism, is that it remains absolute in that Picard will never waver from it, because that's his orders as a Starfleet officer. And it's like, yeah, in this situation, probably most people would agree that this is kind of taking that stance a bit too far. I mean, that's the whole argument between him and Crusher. But Picard, characterized so far, and basically for most of the series, is the type of guy that would still stick to this, even in the hardest of situations. And I was watching this, and I'm like, I really hope Picard doesn't break his own moral code of sticking to Starfleet regulations, which is where it looked like it was going on a few times. But for him to take that hard-nosed stance was good. Was great. I really enjoyed that. I found that to be compelling television, and the way that it kind of has this almost positive hook at the end, where he's like, you can't take these materials that will elongate the
I did like that.
this relationship. It's like, solving the problem in a way that aligns with his orders to ultimately arrive at a more positive result after a bunch of suffering and whatnot.
Do you want me to ruin that for you?
Sure.
So, according to, I guess this isn't really a canon source anymore because it's been contradicted, but
Well, after they canceled the EU.
After Disney bought us, there's a resource book that talks about what happened to the Breckians after this, right? And apparently, they start going through withdrawal.
Wait, I thought the Ornarans had withdrawal.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the Ornarans.
Okay.
Sorry.
Gotta step up your game.
So the Ornarans go through withdrawal, and they come to the conclusion that they were being drugged. Basically, they figure it out, and they just decide to keep buying. They just decide to keep buying the drug.
That's so dumb.
It's very dumb. But again, not particularly canon, but I think that's the only other time we ever hear about the Ornarans again, so that's all we've got.
Well, that doesn't really make sense given this episode, because the point of Picard not giving them those coils was that they can't...
They couldn't trade.
Right, they don't have the choice. They can't keep buying the drug.
Here's my headcanon.
Okay.
About what happened.
Talk to me.
They're off the drugs long enough to stop being stupid, right? They fix their ships, and then they immediately go buy more drugs.
I can't say that's not realistic.
It really is, though, isn't it? Maybe that is the best ending.
But what's hilarious to me is that would have to involve, like, a committee decision. Like, this whole planet, this government, like, all right, guys, we've been off, what is it, Felicite?
Oh, I can't remember the name.
We've been off this drug for... like however many years now, maybe decades. No one's addicted to it anymore. We're all living normal lives. What do you say? We, for old time's sake, we go back, buy some more, and then they hold it to a vote, and it's like overwhelming majority says yes.
Well, it's like Yar says, drugs make you feel good.
They do make you feel good. So
there's a compelling argument for drugs, I think.
There's a lot to talk about in this episode, and we don't have to go in chronological order, but I do want to talk about the beginning right now, because
I absolutely do too. So yeah, go for it.
The first act, maybe depending on how you define act. If you define act by like commercial break, then it's the first two acts move at such a frustratingly glacial pace that I was aggressively bored and actually frustrated watching it. It's just okay. So there's this ship and they need help. Got it. But let's take 10 to 15 minutes of just trying to communicate with this guy who's is ultimately revealed to be high, and just talking really slowly. There's no urgency. It's so boring. And this goes on for so long. If you want,
I found that funny.
I did not find it funny. Like I wanted them to get on with it.
So what you're saying is they should have maybe cut that down by like half.
Yeah. I get the idea. Like this guy's high. He doesn't really care about his ship. That's strange. All these people value this cargo so much, they send it first. I get it. But it just felt like it was so long. And
yeah. I will tell you, I appreciated the idea of running into someone in space who has no idea how to operate their own ship.
Yeah, but at the same time,
It feels like you're running into like extremely competent people in Star Trek when real life is definitely not like that, right? So
I'm reminded of that race from like several seasons forward of like a race of idiots. Like they're all stupid, but they like captured Geordi by luring him onto their ship to help them.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I have a soft spot for that kind of stuff.
Yes, but there's so many shots of the bridge communicating with his vessel, and the guy in the vessel, to John, says something that's like offbeat or strange or lackadaisical, and then they all look at each other. This happens like 15 times.
Right. Yeah, they're really driving the point home because the audience in no way could infer that this character is stupid or something just by seeing it once or twice.
Yes, which is weird because the idea is not that they're stupid. It's that they're like high.
Yeah.
So okay, they're high, so they can't repair their ship, but then they get sober and they still don't really have access to that kind of knowledge or materials. And what's really weird is that like, we can't, if we don't have these coils, we can't repair our ship. But you made the ship in the first place. It's your ship. So why can't you just make another coil? Presumably you made the first one.
And I guess that's a good point because, I mean, how many centuries have they been kind of under the thumb of the Breckians with this drug thing, right?
Right.
It has to be a few at least. So, even while they were kind of taking this drug, they had built the ships.
Yeah, so it's just, that's not a big deal. But it is like an inconsistency.
It is. I didn't think about that.
Right. Gotta write better scripts.
But yes, the opening was slow. I thought it was kind of cool how they opened with the Enterprise is going to kind of just observe a phenomenon.
Yeah, that's very in character.
Yeah, it's and it's kind of something that we don't really see too often, I think, at least up to this point, because most opens are kind of like we've been asked to go to this planet to save someone or something like that,
Right.
It's kind of cool to see the Enterprise having a little bit of downtime just doing research.
Yeah, having an overtly scientific mission that is shown instead of referred to.
Right, exactly. Yes, overtly scientific. It's a good way to put it. And I wish we got more of that actually as the show went on. But I guess it maybe doesn't make for the most compelling material.
Well,
I mean, what kind of conflicts can you really?
Let's go look at the sun. I really liked. I loved the high tech of like putting a black circle over a part of the screen, so they don't have to look at the sun.
Right. Right. They never found a way to like observe a sun in any other way.
It's high tech both in universe and in production of just all right. Put a flat black circle over it.
Yes. Yeah, it's beautiful. I do want to I want to draw attention to a Troy quote that I wrote down.
Ooh. Is it about somebody's obvious feelings?
Yeah, so when the ship starts kind of going haywire, it's because of the proximity to the sun, right? And she turns to Captain Picard and says, "Captain, the level of tension on the ship is mounting." Ooh,
that's interesting.
And I would never have been able to infer that. I never would have thought that people would be frustrated by appliances kind of short circuiting and not being able to do their jobs. So I'm really thankful.
It's like they really felt the need to establish the points for every character.
Yeah.
Like this is what Troy does.
It really is just like Troy. We've seen over the past 20 episodes that Troy is only ever used to this effect in the first season.
All right,
it's mind-numbing.
Let's be more sympathetic to Troy and look at it this way. How many characters in the show so far have been written with complex emotions?
Right, sure. It is just the thing that bothers me about it though is that like that's all she does. She has nothing else.
Right.
You know, she got one episode to herself about her wedding, right?
Yeah.
Um, which you know, even now I look back on fondly, the dinner scene and such. But
The gong.
yeah, the gong. But that's really it. And every other episode, she's relegated to like 2 or 3 lines where she has to tell us, the audience, what other people are thinking, as if it's not entirely obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't want to be like, oh, you know, Troy's various romance subplots were very good, because they weren't over the show's run, but at least they were something for her to do.
Yeah, yeah, and then you know you start seeing her in her office,
Yeah,
have
doing
therapist
counseling.
Yeah,
The best.
so that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say the best Troy moment of the entire show is an entire episode late in the show's run where she's abducted by Romulans and is given plastic surgery to look like a Romulan, and then she has to navigate this entire tense scenario aboard a Romulan ship while she's masquerading as like some high-ranking official.
See, I was gonna say the best scene with Troy was when she turned into a cake.
All right, well that's the best scene, but the best Troy episode was the one I'm describing. That was Data's dream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a weird concept now that I'm saying it out loud.
Looking like a cake.
Well, not that, just Data dreaming. And once Data's dreaming,
Oh yeah,
and he's got like a telephone inside him, and there's some like 1920s miners trying to kill him.
yeah. I mean, that's the only part I remember from that episode. Actually, is the cake.
I think
So.
I think the end of that episode is where Data sits and watches a pot boiling to see if it, or a kettle boiling to see how fast it boils.
Was that?
I think it was.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll get to that when we get to it, huh?
Yeah, see you guys in a few years.
There's a lot to unpack there.
It's going to be our first quadruple length episode.
Right.
The psychology
4 hours.
of Data's dream.
Did you catch that scene? There's a scene where Riker and Yar are walking down the hall talking.
So I
Like-
don't
like
remember
an
the contents of what they said, but I distinctly remember a Riker Yar scene sticking out to me as being bizarre.
It was like a Gilmore Girls scene.
Just
Right.
nonstop.
Just
no
a million
pacing.
miles an hour. Yes.
What were they talking
And it
about?
only stopped. I can't remember. I think it was about the it was about the electric powers.
Yes.
Which we can talk about that too, I guess.
Yeah,
how that
because
has
this is
plot.
the first time I think that Star Trek has shown like basically superpowers on any alien race. And what I liked about that conversation, the Riker Yar thing, was that it was an attempt at scientific contextualization for that. Where it's like, oh, they live close to the sun, and the UV rays have changed their evolution over millennia. It's like, sure, whatever. But no matter how you explain it, the choice to have superpowers on a humanoid race just does not gel with Star Trek.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, in fact, it was inconsequential to the story.
And that's the thing. It was completely inconsequential. They could have taken it out.
Yeah.
Then no different.
If you gave that to John, just show him pull out a knife or something, or grab like Riker's phaser or whatever it is.
A little laser sword.
Yeah, laser sword, laser whip.
Yeah.
If you had one of the
laser
Ferengi electric whips.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. But really, give him any weapon and you can just remove that element from the script and it doesn't matter.
Right.
So, yeah, I didn't
So there's that.
didn't like that element. The conversation was a strange tone breaker. Trying to think. Let me look at my notes here. There's it's so dense. So, here's something.
It is very good.
Why did the script call out the fact that there were 6 people on board? and 2 of them didn't make it. Because it never becomes a plot point. I guess the idea is to show that, the cargo was more valuable than they were.
Yeah, and that's entirely it.
But at the same time, sending the cargo first already gets that point across.
That fills the role.
To me, I thought that those other 2 people were going to be like another faction, or their identity would shed more light on the relationship of these 2 factions.
Right.
But I guess not, and none of the
we get a lot in the beginning of this episode that really just has no bearing on the rest of it.
Exactly, and it's unsatisfying as an audience member to see things that are set up without a payoff, because they stick out to you, and you're like, well, what's this gonna mean? What's this gonna mean? And it means nothing. Oh, great, nice writing.
Yeah. Overall, just terrible use of an opening, I guess.
Yeah.
When all things are considered.
Yeah. So this is one of the times where it's like, oh, this should have been given more attention, or this should have been given, like, I don't have anything that I think could have been expanded upon. So I kind of get it why these scenes really dragged, or because they needed to fill time.
Right.
But ultimately, where it goes, I like quite a bit. This Brechian Ornaran power dynamic and subterfuge. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it does become a really fun conflict.
It is, and it got a lot from very little. Like, when you start out thinking like, okay, we're gonna have these 2 aliens based around breakfast, then whatever, we'll do something with that.
Yeah, right.
And ultimately, it becomes this whole thing. But yeah, so we should probably talk about that, I guess.
Yeah. Tell the audience.
So this was one of Gene's brain children. The idea for the Brechians and the Ornarans, those names were chosen very, very particularly. The idea was that the Brechians would be culture based around these fancy and great breakfasts that they cooked, and the Ornarans would have orchards of oranges that dotted their entire planet. And Gene came up with this while eating breakfast one day, and he's like, oh man, it would be great to have a breakfast themed alien race, just to have a more nutritious theme to Star Trek. And that's a great message to have for the kids, eat a balanced breakfast, eat healthy. And it kind of, in this episode, it was a perfect choice because it dovetailed very nicely with the ultimate message of the episode, which is the anti-drug stuff. Gene's just a genius, exactly. But you probably knew this without knowing it. You, the audience member, I would say. If you've ever heard somebody shorten the word breakfast to brekkie, well, where do you think that started?
Right. And, on that topic, staple of brekkie, orange juice, right?
Right.
Of course. There's a scene where the Brechians are in their quarters, drinking a mysterious liquid, right?
Ah.
And right, some have speculated that it's orange juice, and you heard it here first, but in fact it's orange juice, because the way this happened was the Brechians were buying the oranges from the Ornarans. They weren't quite oranges though. They were a citrus adjacent fruit. And, of course, the replicators, they're not loaded with these kind of niche food items, right? So off screen, what canonically happened was the Brechians kind of discussed this with Data, and he informs them of the similarities between an Earth orange and their own. And, that's how they end up drinking the orange juice. And, this ends up having just disastrous consequences over the course of several pocket TNG novels. For those of you who don't read the novels, it culminates in the famous beam katana scene with Dr. Crusher.
Oh yes, the infamous, I would say.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a butterfly effect, really. Had they not spoken to Data about their oranges, where would we be in the extended universe of Star Trek. It would be a very, very different landscape, you know?
It would. And a butterfly effect is a really good way to put it, like you said. There's so many minute things that happen in an episode of Star Trek or are said in an episode of Star Trek that have compounding effects throughout various novels and such. It's so much to keep track of that I don't even fucking bother.
Oh, well, I mean, right, I don't either.
Yeah.
You know. Well, you know, no self-respecting person really does, right?
That's true. That's true. I mean, if you catch yourself reading a Star Trek novel, come on.
Oh man, that's a very, very sad life one must.
Oh, definitely, definitely. In fact, like I can barely handle watching the show.
Oh, it's complete schlock.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
If I didn't work on it and had like, you know, these memories and affinity for it, and I wasn't making like several $100s from the Patreon every month.
Right.
What's the point? Not everything can be Dune.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, Dune is really like the peak of science fiction.
Indeed.
But I digress.
So
let's continue talking about symbiosis.
It's only going to get worse is the thing. Because now I think we kind of have to dive into like the meat of this drug stuff. Because it's the whole plot point of this is that there's these two alien factions. One of them has a plague on their planet, and the other one has the medicine for that plague. And they're caught in an economic dispute about the payments for that medicine. And that's where the Enterprise finds them. So there's this choice to be made of like, do we give this race like their medicine, like we force it to be given to them, or do we allow the people to hold it until they're able to get payment? And you know, that's a cool moral decision, but you know, there's a twist. Oh my god. Turns out there is no plague. Instead, that is simply withdrawal symptoms for people who haven't had this medicine, which is actually just a drug, a narcotic.
Yes.
And caked into this is an entire anti-drug theme for the episode, which perhaps is best exemplified by the scene we alluded to earlier between Yar and Wesley Crusher, where Wesley Crusher asks, why do people do drugs? And Yar says, 'cause it feels good. And that's not selling it. That's selling it short, because it's a decently long scene. It's like 3 minutes, and it's completely. None of these characters do almost anything else for the rest of the episode, especially not Wesley.
Right.
So the story behind that one is that scene was made to be isolated. Like, the goal was that we could cut it out of the episode and show it to children in schools as like an anti-drug thing. At that time, we were partnering with the DARE program, if you're familiar with that. It's an anti-drug program put on by various police stations.
Do they still do that?
I don't think they do. I think kids just do
drugs
these days.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just let kids do drugs and have sex.
Right.
You know.
So, I think DARE stands for Drug Awareness and Resistance.
What's the E stand for?
That's a good question. Anyway, at the time in the mid '80s when we were partnering with them, ours was the Young Ensigns Dare program. It was a partnership, and it was kind of cool. Like, we made this scene for it that the kids could watch in school. We made a bunch of slogans. Our writers wrote them that were on the various pamphlets and stuff, alongside stock photos of our characters. I actually, something special. I went into the archives and I found some of those slogans that I can share with you. I don't know if you remember these.
Oh my god!
But I had a big smile on my face when I found them. So listen to this. Here's one. Captain Picard dares you, and it's a picture of Picard, pointing directly at the camera. Here's one. Dare in Klingon is Granch, which you can imagine Worf's on that.
What does that stand for?
Well, it doesn't stand for anything. It's just
Oh, okay. It's not like a linear one-to-one translation.
Exactly. I mean, we can ask our resident Klingon experts what Gavangchuk means, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
We need to get a Klingon expert on this show.
That's true. What season is it that has like that big Klingon power dispute? 3,
I think.
All right, we'll need to bring him in for that. Got a few more of these. There's one with Riker and his trombone on it. It says, "Drugs and you go together like blondes and jazz."
Ooh, that's beautiful.
Which is to say, not at all.
Right.
Of course, we had to get Data in there. Data says, "My positronic brain can't compute why anyone wouldn't dare." Because Data has a positronic brain. That's the name of his brain.
Right.
And then another Worf one. I don't know why we had so many with Worf, but only true Klingon warriors dare.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's true.
It is true. It is true. Klingon warriors have no need for drugs. So, as you might imagine, that program was kind of a failure. Like, none of the kids seemed very interested in being anti-drug or in Star Trek. Which, fine. Go do drugs. I don't really care. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. If they don't appreciate what we do for them, it's fine. While we're on the subject of Yar, though, I would be remiss if I didn't discuss the little BTS story we have for her this episode.
Oh, I'm always down for BTS.
Yeah, always. We love BTS.
Hashtag BTS.
Yeah, definitely. Hashtag us in hashtag Readier Room. Hashtag BTS. Hashtag BTS meal. Right. So Denise in this episode, I mean, you mentioned she doesn't really have much to do, which is fair. She doesn't really.
In any episode, really.
Right. And that's the thing, though. Ironically, I think this is her best performance of the series. And I mean, ironically, in many different ways here. And the whole reason is she was so animated this episode. You can kind of tell she was giving it her all. Which is, more than you can say for most of her appearances, right? And the whole story behind that is that she thought we had kind of reneged on her killing of the character in Skin of Evil, which was filmed before this episode, right?
Right, out of sequence.
Yeah, and see, that's another thing they don't really tell you is that Denise really didn't want to leave. I know that's a story that goes around, right? She wasn't satisfied with her character's role, but no, she loved Yar and she loved Trek. But we were getting complaints from the network, right? That we had too many white people in prominent roles, right? And when it came down to it, we knew who was getting the axe, right? Like, we can't just fire the good actors.
Yeah. And I mean, what do you... We're trying to make art here, not spare anybody's feelings.
It's something, to show future generations, to show our children.
To show the next generation, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Something to dress up our children in little Star Trek uniforms and sit them in front of the TV while they cry. But yeah, so basically the issue was that we ended up with a script for an episode that obviously Yar needed to be in, right? We were exploring degenerate themes like drug use, so you have to have Denise there.
It just wouldn't work without her.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it wouldn't make any sense. So Denise was brought back for one more episode under the pretense that we'd actually be reviving her character in the one after this. So when shooting wrapped up, we all got together to, I guess, quote, celebrate, right? And Rick dropped the news that we actually weren't going to need her anymore. And you remember, she stormed out crying. She was hysteric. And I don't think anyone heard from her for months. And I mean, we all had a good laugh. I guess there really was something to celebrate then.
Oh, yeah. It was a fun day.
it was perfect.
Anytime that we could come together as a crew,
Hmm.
those are fond memories in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this episode was one of them.
Yeah. So where were we?
We were talking about the drug thing, like the plot twist of the episode.
Right. Yeah. So, and here's kind of where I feel like I found not really a plot hole, but I guess a hole in the world building of Trek. And that's that the entire time, like right when we learn that that it is a drug, or actually even before that, I couldn't help but think, why can't the Enterprise just buy this drug off of the Breccians, right?
Well, that's also interfering.
I suppose
if they gave it to the Ornarans, I guess.
Yeah, okay, I guess that's true. Now, but this started making me think: how does the Federation operate among societies with currencies?
I was gonna say, can they buy them? Do they have money?
Exactly, but it wouldn't make any sense because there's so many planets that still use currency, right? I mean, there's advanced civilizations and societies that aren't part of the Federation that don't operate on the same, merit-based system.
Yeah, I mean, so there's the Ferengi, first of all, which is a society based around money in the most severe way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's true, but it's one of those things you can't think too hard about if you want to keep your respect for the show.
Oh, but we can think about the universal translator, of course.
Oh, of course. Yeah. In fact, that's all I think about. I'm falling asleep at night. I'm like, why are they talking like that?
But yeah, they do everything leading up to this twist to make it as obvious as possible what the twist is going to be.
Well, I kind of liked that. Yes, it was super obvious. Where throughout the whole first part, you're thinking, is this guy drunk? Like, what's going on? And then you like when those two people get their first hit that we see, inside sickbay, it very much looks like people shooting up.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like that there was that opportunity for even slow audience members to arrive at the conclusion before it's explicitly told to them. And that's in some ways good writing when something is shown in such a way that it is understandable without the explicit saying of it. And in this case, you can't sidestep explicitly saying it because the characters have to discuss it.
Of course. So and not only do they have to discuss it, they have to have a very slow, awkward exposition dump in the Breccians' room. I don't know if you remember this.
Yes, I do. I do remember this because they're talking to the Breccians, and it's like an old detective it's like Columbo.
Yeah, it is.
Where they're like, oh, and then you did this. Oh, and you did this too. Yeah. I found your plan.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of awkward. But
that was not a high point of the episode. But the thing is, all of this moral conflict between Dr. Crusher and Picard that transpires, where Crusher wants them to save the Ornarans and tell them that they're on drugs and to get them off it, and Picard does not want to interfere, is extremely interesting to me.
Yeah, I think that's a good dynamic to have, for sure.
And that kind of stuff is the exact reason why I watch Star Trek.
Right.
It's interesting. It's just having like, oh, we're gonna shoot things in space and have a ship battle. Like, whatever. Who cares? But we're gonna navigate an intercultural conflict while keeping to our own orders and moral code is is a lot more interesting to me.
Definitely. The moral conflict is very strong in this episode.
And when you do that without betraying the characters, their characterization, that's when it's a resounding success to me. And that's why I love this episode so much, despite its numerous flaws.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good episode. I mean, yeah, that's basically it, though, isn't it? I mean, we don't really have much more to say about it.
Not really. Yeah, not really anything. It's
it's pretty straightforward once the twist happens.
It is. It's from that point it shifts to any intrigue about the situation to just being this Crusher Picard dynamic, which is good, but there's not much to talk about there.
And that's the thing. It's done well, so
yeah, I can't.
What can you really say? It's standard Trek.
It should have been bad. Then we could have talked about it more.
If it was bad, we could have made fun of it. I will say there's a scene where Riker walks onto the bridge and then sits on a computer console.
Yes, you are the best. I'm so happy you noticed that. Like oh my god, it tickles me to no end that both of us watch this independent of one another, and we're like, yeah, that's weird.
It's just so inappropriate.
It is. Holy shit. Oh, Jesus.
How would that not, like, and that starts to, raise the question, touchscreens of today are heat sensitive, right? Are they not heat sensitive in the future? And what do they react to?
We have another insight into the panels when earlier in the episode they're all going haywire, and you see them kind of like shut off, and they're just completely black. So there's there's nothing in those screens themselves. It's all projections.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah. Wild. We might as well give a shout out to Riker's, Frakes' Emmy moment when he's taken hostage.
Kind of funny that he gets frozen 2 episodes in a row.
Yeah, that is weird.
And luckily this time he was not standing there all day.
It's true. I mean, and he also had somebody to hold him up, which is nice.
Right. Yeah, it was easier all around, and you can tell because it's a beautiful performance.
It is. We what was the direction that he had?
The direction that he had.
Yeah, for like what to look like.
I think it was, God, what did he say? I think it was cerebral palsy.
Right. Yes. The director brought in his son, and he's like, look like this.
Right. Which, some people might think is a little bit heartless, but he used his son to great effect.
Yeah, and
several times actually.
And his son liked being on the set. Some of the staff signed a baseball cap for him. It's a good time.
Right. He couldn't understand a damn thing he said, but it is what it is.
Yeah. It was a bit cruel when Brent would kind of do like a mocking impression of the kid behind his back, but.
Right. Yeah. But you kind of let those things go because it's Brent.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say he was very happy that his dad had to sit in the wheelchair.
That's true.
So they were kind of matching.
It brought them closer together.
Very excited. Yeah. So in a way, we really did kind of do a lot of good for the world in just this one episode.
Yeah. This might be the most historically important episode of The Next Generation.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, look at what it did for all these kids who, would have done drugs if not for us.
Mm-hmm. Now, the staff, they did a ton of drugs, but the kids, they didn't do any drugs. Unless you're Will Wheaton, then you did some drugs.
Then, of course, you did drugs.
Right. Yes. So I guess that'll do it.
That's it. That's a wrap. Wow.
So I said my thoughts on the episode, and that it was basically one of my favorites this season, despite the problems. Sure. What do you think about it?
I think it's definitely up there for me as well. Probably one of my favorites too. I think most of the issues I have with it are kind of just personal, very subjective, and I can't really fault it for what it does. So it's something I would absolutely recommend, that it would be on my watch list for season 1, for sure.
Same.
Yeah. All right then. So we'll wrap this up and move on to my question
Of the week?
of the week.
Oh
I
my
can't
God.
call it question of the week because you already have the question of the week, right? So
True. Well, trivia question of the week.
trivia question. So I've got another. It's going to be multiple choice.
Okay.
It's another part of the TNG Bible, okay?
I'm in.
And this comes from page 19, clothing and costumes.
Mm-hmm.
And this section discusses how the TNG uniform is going to look a lot less military looking than the Star Trek films that were kind of its contemporary. It would go into like what people would wear off duty and stuff like that. So this third paragraph, I'm going to read it to you, and we're going to fill in the blank. So, when off duty, our characters may wear clothing appropriate to their personal moods and heritage. We might see African dashikis, Pacific Island sarongs, and perhaps even a blank.
Oh Lord.
Okay.
Before you say the options, I'm just gonna guess burqa.
It is not a burqa, but good guess.
Thank you.
Okay. Here are 4 options. A, Japanese kimono. B, Indian sari. C, Scottish kilt. Or D, New York Yankees baseball cap.
Oh no. Oh no. There's no way it's New York Yankees baseball cap, is there? That's no way. That's the thing though. Like, all of these are just fine. They're basically the same level as the other options, but the baseball cap is just too stupid to get away from it. It's oh no. God, I'm gonna lose it. Because this is like the perfect kind of fake answer too, where it's like, I'll just throw something stupid in for a joke. Oh God. Oh shit. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna say D, New York Yankees baseball cap.
You are correct.
Oh my God.
You are correct. Have you seen a New York Yankees baseball cap in any of TNG?
No, but I have seen them listen exclusively to 20th century music, so.
Right.
Good God.
It's ridiculous.
Could you imagine? What if it's Worf?
Right. Just someone walking around with a Yankees hat.
Fucking
It's
genius.
insane.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Scottish kilt thing when I heard that first. I'm like, oh, he's got to get some white people thing in there.
Yeah.
But New York Yankees cap definitely qualifies.
Yeah, the kilt I thought was kind of on the fence of appropriate and ridiculous to even mention.
All right, well, I guess that'll do it for the week.
Yeah.
I'll have to procure a New York Yankees baseball cap to wear next week during our recording.
Right, in true Trek fashion.
True Trek fashion. But before we go to reward anybody sticking around to the end of the podcast, we might have a special new production in the works. I'm not going to say any more, but stay tuned and watch the skies, watch the Twitter, and you might see some special Readier announcements soon. But until those Readier announcements come, everybody, I bid you a nice, please, stay ready.
The troublesome little man-child.
Consider that in the history of many worlds, there have always been disposable creatures.
Do you consider yourself superior to us?
Should have told him to mind his own damn business.
When I stroke the beard thusly, do I not appear more intellectual?
promising beginning.